Secretary Jewell, thank you for being here today. You're my neighbor to the north and a resident of the same state as our esteemed chairman, Doc Hastings. I think it's extraordinary that you volunteered to leave a successful private sector career and take on this public service. As you can tell from the opening remarks of the chairman, I think it was a courageous decision, and it will be a bit difficult. There are differences of opinion on this committee, pretty much divided one side to the other. Every once in a while we can reach across party lines, but we differ significantly. I really want to hear today about your plans as a new secretary, what the implementation, we're going to move forward with the president's agenda, alternative energy development, your plans for climate change, the acidification of our oceans, the fact that we're having record wildfires again this year in the West, and we have very dry conditions are a challenge in particular to your agency, to this government, and for our future. I believe, and on our side, we feel that we need a new energy policy. We essentially are still under the Bush-Cheney energy policy, which was really designed to make us more dependent upon fossil fuels. Despite that, today we are less dependent on fossil fuels. Last year, our oil production, and we're less dependent upon imported fossil fuels. Last year, oil production reached its highest level in 20 years. Natural gas production at all-time high. Oil production, despite some protestations from the other side, is higher now than at the end of the Bush administration from public lands. We are less dependent upon foreign oil from a combination of production on public and private lands. We recently held a hearing where there's an insistence by the industry, the American Petroleum Institute, and you, I know, have some expertise in this area in particular, and past employment. They claim that they need to lease more areas. And my question to that witness was, well, with 25 million acres of public land onshore and 30 million acres of land offshore, why do you need more now? Why not perhaps develop those areas, and then after those are fully developed, if we need more oil resources or gas resources, come and ask? His answer was not particularly satisfactory. On our side of the aisle, we have tried to have a use it or lose it policy. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that later, where you just can't sit on these leases. And people say, well, why would the industry sit on a lease? They won't do that. Well, of course they will. I mean, it's money in the bank, and they pay so little per year, and the price of oil goes up so much every year. 20 years from today, it's going to be worth probably 5 times what it is now. So I think we have issues regarding performance before we expand into sensitive areas. There's tremendous opposition on this side of the aisle from that. Hydraulic fracturing, I'd be very interested in hearing about the administration moving forward with some standardization of federal floor on hydraulic fracturing. We had a hearing on that issue. I put it to the witnesses who came from 4 different states and one company that operated among the states. How do you deal with this? I mean, here in Texas, you require pressure testing for casing. Here in, I think, Wyoming, you require full disclosure of the chemicals before. Here you require enclosed storage of the waste above ground, and yet there's no uniform standard. And I got some, interest from the idea of having a uniform standard as a floor. Be very interested to hear about progress on that. Had a hearing just last week on hard rock mining, or the week before last. Again, I made the point I've been making since the early 90s, when we did pass a meaningful mining reform on a bipartisan basis in the House, which included hard rock royalties. The federal government, which is often, from this side being told to be run like a business, is the only entity that does not charge a royalty for the extraction of depletable valuable mineral resources, hard rock, from its lands. States do, tribes do, individuals do, other governments around the world do, we don't. I'd be very interested in your thoughts on mining reform and the potential for some revenues, which we know we could use for other resource issues from those lands. And I mentioned earlier, obviously you have a very big portfolio, the near oceans, our concerns about the potential for drilling in sensitive areas, our concerns about the acidification. We have had shellfish farm failures in the Northwest because of acidification. You know, how you have plans to deal with that in terms of your approach to global warming. You know, hopefully we can find some ways to work together across the aisle and work in consensus with you on these extraordinarily critical issues to the American public and to the future of our country and the world. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here.
I thank the